Okay, we're back with the next episode in the map making tutorial series. We are going to get into material editing now. I have Farmersburg opened up here. We're going to be editing the textures on the side of this building. Now, there's a couple things that happen when we edit the textures on the side of this building. I'll teach you at a very basic level here how to change the siding textures on this. But there are a couple things that that happen that we need to edit in the XML in order to get what we want, and that is because the textures on this specific barn, which I chose specifically for this lesson, the textures or the materials are tied to each other. So the roof and the wall textures are tied to each other. So if I change the roof texture, that will subsequently change the wall texture, even though they're two separate objects. Okay, so we want to, sometimes maybe we want red sides and a white roof. We need to change the XML file and create a new material that the sides can draw from to do that. So let me just demonstrate really quick as a precursor of the work we're going to do. So here's the problem. So I'm going to open up material editing under Window. Okay. At a very basic level here, this only has one texture applied to it, this albedo map. I'm going to open this. I'm going to click on this little triple dot here. I mean, you can see the file path here if you hover over that right there. That's a awful file path. This is like my second map I ever made, so please excuse me. And I'm going to click on another just so you can see what the texture looks like. This is the texture, 512 by 256 alpha channel. Okay, I'm going to click on the check mark again. That should take me to the file where it's located, white steel. Okay, now I could just double click this and then it would be the same and exit out and nothing changes, right? So let's say I want, instead of white steel, I want red steel. And before we get started, let me before we move into that, I want to stress that this is the buildings that have this this what I call like flat texture or unwrapped texture, where this is just a square texture that applies broadly to the walls and roof. Sorry about that. That's one way of texturing buildings that have been textured in Blender. The other way is a wrapped texture. Or what I call, I don't know the official terms of it, it's just a wrap texture. Okay, so this one wraps around the building. It saves a lot more space in your textures folder because it's covering, the whole building in this texture. So that one's harder to edit. You can't just replace it with that flat texture. Okay, this one you would probably need to take into paint.net. And you would adjust the textures from there to make it, this used to be red actually. And so I made it white. It doesn't look very as pretty as it could be, but I kind of adjusted the textures a little bit, played around with the textures in paint.net, exported it, and I used that for that siding. So that's a little bit different from what we're doing here. So let's get into the flat textures, or unwrapped textures, if you want to call it that. Let's say, like I said before, we want red steel. So I'm going to go to the front of the folder and just type in red steel here. Red steel. Okay. It's red. Same texture, same format, but it's red. See how I had the roof selected but the wall, which is a separate object, changed colors with it? I don't want that. I want like a white roof or a different colored roof and a different colored or a different textured side. So that bothers me. Now we could, we don't have to use steel. We could use, I believe this is also a flat texture. What's this called? This one's called Metal W. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. We could easily apply that here. So it's not metal either. That's wood. So let's go Metal W, run a search of that in the textures file. And look, that doesn't look half bad, but you can see the wood doesn't really line up as well. And it kind of, so sometimes these textures get super stretched out too, especially when you're working with your scaling buildings. So let's say we scaled this building. Look at what happens to the texture on the wall. Obviously, and the objects too look awful and everything. So sometimes that texture just gets stretched and you need the smaller. I think the steel texture works really well for this building. Sometimes it doesn't for other buildings. sometimes you might just have to make your own custom texture, which I haven't really gotten into, and I'm not necessarily gonna teach you how to make a texture from scratch, because it's something that I don't know how to do yet. But I know how to edit existing textures, and there are a lot, I mean a lot of textures out there that you can apply to your buildings. So it's not like you would really need to create a custom one unless you really want to. Okay, so I've gone ahead. Let's fix this problem of ours. Okay, I've gone ahead and exported this to a folder. All right, I've brought everything to the front. I think what I need to do still, I'm going to do this really quick just to show you how you can do this really, changing the file paths and everything here. Let's see, this is all, let's see. Let's highlight that because a lot of them are that many folders deep. And not in a backwards direction. Replace. I could do that throughout here. There's still some that are going to have, you know, ridiculous file paths. So there's, you know, this one still. So there's a method. There is a code for doing this. For fixing these file paths. Let me look that up really quick. I'm going to cut the video really quick and you know, come back with that code so you guys can do this really quickly. Okay, so I've got the expression for Notepad++ for fixing your file paths here. So I'm going to show you a screenshot that I took from a while ago here. This is the so we're going to go to regular expression here. And you're going to use the replace function. You're going to type this code in exactly as you see it here. Okay, and I put this not dash, but like this separator in between DDS and PNG. You could do that. You could do DDS separate PNG, separate JPEG, separate XML. You do that for the entire expression. It's going to take all of this line from this is from a map texture file. So this is, you know, / textures, you know, how we talked about how that's referencing the front of the file and then go to the textures file, you know. So I replaced that with for this specific map. This is Simon Family Farms. I replaced that with /textures $1. Okay, and I think match case, you need to do that as well. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't do that over here, so I'll show you what I did over here instead. If I do that, if I have this as /textures $1, that's not going to get me what I want. It's going to add an extra textures onto the end of this. So these, you know, this is a very basic example, but I'm going to basically get rid of everything in between textures and the DDS file here. So I'll show you. We got this highlighted. Replace. See how what that did there? Replace. That's a JPEG. So these are JPEGs. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to add that. So JPEG. Okay, and maybe it'll work. Yep, there. Now it'll apply to that as well. Okay, cool. Now we got them all looking like this. Well, we want them to look like this because I have them in the same folder as the i3D, right? Instead of, you know, we don't want to click into textures to find the textures in here, right? Okay, so let's go back here, and we're going to be doing this towards the end of the map as well, so I'll remind you of this. But this is like a super powerful expression. Okay, so now we got, you know, now we can just do what we were doing before. We just this up here, and then nothing, and then find next, replace. You could replace them all if you really wanted. Replace. See, now they're all perfectly how they need to be. The rest of these are data files. That's fine. They stay like that. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to open the i3D up. Let's get this out of here. I'm going to open the i3D up. I'm going to exit out of that here. And Giants Editor, just the text to check the textures. So I exported this barn to just a random folder on the desktop. Cow barn. Let's zero it out. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's fine. I don't care about the scale and whatnot. Okay, so why aren't you red? This is missing a texture. I probably screwed something up in Notepad++. or deleted it by accident. So that's fine. I mean, everything else is fine. I just screwed up one thing, but I wasn't going to use these anyway, so get out of here. I'm just going to delete those really quick. There's all this extra stuff that I added onto this barn. Get that out of there, get that out of there. Okay, that's perfect. This is all I really want. Okay. Okay, so this is just, again, this is just an example of you know, this happens with a lot of objects where they're tied, their materials are tied, and we want to separate them. Okay, so again, let's go down to material editing. We see that this object is called roof, and it's the scene graph. And then this right here is called walls. Okay, they're two separate objects, right? We want them to be white on top and red on the sides, okay? And so I'm going to exit out of this. Well, let's look really quick. Really, before we do that, I'm going to show you really quick what's going on here. Okay, so I clicked on the roof, and the material down here says, can I increase this? Get user attributes out of here. We don't need that. Okay, and then scroll up here. So the material says walls. So the material says walls. Sorry, my computer, my recording software kind of glitched out there for a second. So the material says walls. Okay, that says it for the roof. Says it for the walls as well. We want the roof to just be roof. I don't think there's anything in here, a material that's called roof, so that's good thing that we can call it when we open this in Notepad++. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this really quick. I'm gonna open up that folder we were just in. I'm gonna delete that, get that out of here. Okay, I'm gonna open this with Notepad++. Okay, so again, 3 components to this. We have white steel, which is right here. The file ID for that is 4. Okay. So let's run a search for file ID 4. White steel. Okay, file ID, here's the material down here. Again, walls. And the material ID, I hate how this is organized, by the way, but the material ID is 21. Okay, this is this comes in 3 parts. Okay, this is the textures. The textures and the material ID are tied together, and the object and the material ID are tied together. So the material ID is like communicating with the object. Where did it go? The material ID is communicating with the object what textures are involved in that material. If that makes any sense. So walls. Okay, so now I'm going to look up material ID. I bet it's with an S. I think it's with an S actually. So it's multiple. So you add an S onto the end of this. Okay, it's not just material ID, it's material IDs for the object. And look at that. It brought us to material IDs 21. Okay, now if I go look through, can I show all? Or just do a count, I guess? No. If I click on it, it'll do it. There we go. And hold on, my dog's barking. Apologies for that. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so the material ID, I should be able to double click this. There we go, 21, I guess that works. So you can see that the walls and the roof have the same material ID. We want to change that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here. I've already copied and pasted red steel in here. I've gone in, found the texture, copy and pasted it into this file. Okay, so I got that in here. So we're breaking this down into 3 components, remember? So I'm going to copy this white steel line again. 3 components. That's all we had to worry about here. So white steel, this is going to be, you have to use the name of the material. Why do I exit out of this stuff? I apologize. I'm such a mess. All right, textures. That's not the file I wanted. Open the actual file here. Okay, so red steel, it's lowercase red and uppercase S on steel. Okay, so that should be pretty easy. Let's do that, red. Okay, and I want this to be on the sides of the building, so I'm going to apply this to the walls. Okay, so walls will receive a different material ID. So let's go ahead and do kind of what we've been doing with editing textures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just had a whole bunch of zeros after that. None of these file IDs have that number. Okay, so that's 400,000. Let's find file ID 4. I'm just going to use that same line for walls here. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to copy and paste that. Okay, for walls, I'm going to rename this material ID to roof since that's staying the way it is. And I'm going to have this as walls now. Okay, so you don't understand what I hope you can understand what I'm doing here. So this is roof. It's going to have, this still has the white steel texture. Okay, I want that for the roof. Okay, this, however, is going to have the red steel texture that we're adding, so I need to add that file ID that we just added up above right here with 5 zeros after it. Remember that number. File ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's good. Now we need to change the material ID, so I'm going to, make something up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then I'm going to look again for, it's super easy to find just like this, but you'll need to find walls with the material ID 21, and you'll need to change that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the material ID. Okay, the node ID does not matter. Shape ID doesn't matter. File, save. Now when you open this up, and I do have the folder open still, it should be changed. Okay. It's not. What happened to my walls? Okay, my bad with that. What I accidentally did wrong, and this happens, is I put 4 zeros here instead of 5 zeros, and obviously that didn't match down here. So the walls had no material ID. That's why they showed up invisible. So make sure you get the correct amount of zeros. That's why it wasn't showing up. So very, very simple mistake, but it's easy to get lost in the sauce, and get this result and be like, oh, I broke something. No, don't panic. Don't save it either, by the way. Don't panic. Don't save this. Just exit out really quick. It's not what you want. I'm just gonna exit out right now. Okay, go back to your Notepad++ and see what you did wrong. Okay, and see if these don't match, these numbers, if they're not matching, if this doesn't match the actual file ID, if this doesn't match the actual material ID down here, if this material ID isn't matching that material ID. No, that's kind of confusing. Just go back in case you didn't add enough zeros. Okay, so there we go. Oh my gosh, I panicked for a second there. I thought, oh, I did everything wrong. But no, we're good now. Okay, so that's we've solved that issue. Now there's some other materials that we can kind of play around with really quick. I'm just going to do a quick overview of. Okay, so we have these fans. This is better to see in the map actually because the lighting's different. Let me show you these fans. Okay, so we have these fans and they're moving. It's rotating. Okay, these fans are more metallic looking than they actually are when I imported them and put them on this building. So let me go down here to smoothness and metalness. If you don't have, I believe if you don't have a gloss map and not a normal map, you can adjust these two settings. So if I just zero this out here, that's what the fans. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That is what the fans look like. Okay, now some of you might like that. I kind of don't like it. Okay, so you can go down to metalness. Let's bring that up to 8. Okay, so now see how they've changed a little bit, and now they kind of shine. A better example of them shining here. These bins really shine a lot better on the lighting. Let me bring this down to 0. See what those look like without that metalness and smoothness? Okay, now I'm going to reapply it. I'm going to go 0.7, 0.7, 0.7. Now look at that. Look how much better those bins look now that you got. So anything that's metal, you can really, in fact, can I do that with this? Never. Oh yeah, that kind of looks better. You see, so anything that's kind of metal, you know, like this auger, I did that too. I did that to this panel. You can kind of make things look. I did that to this roof, I think. Yeah, this roof looks a lot shinier when the light hits it. See, you know, you can do that with anything with metal. You can, or that's metallic looking. You can do that too. If you overdo it, if you do like smooth this 1-1, it's gonna look like that, which is too shiny. The only thing that should look like that is like a milk tank. Okay, so just try to keep it. I think if you just bring the smoothness down a little bit. Actually, I think I had 0.8. I like 0.8. I like that for those fans. I mean, maybe, you know, maybe you like it without that. That's fine. That's totally fine. So you also notice here that these are rotating. How I'm holding down Alt right now, by the way. I'm in Farmersburg. I'm holding down Alt. These fans are also used on Marksville. These are rotating. How are they rotating when we haven't covered animated animations? So there are some things that rotate and move differently with shaders. Okay, so these, if I click on the fan inside, and I go down here, look at now under custom shade. I've dropped this down, by the way. Custom shaders, I hover over that, it has the mesh rotate shader applied to it. Okay, and down here I can change the rotation, which axis it's rotating along. So right now it's rotating along the Z axis, so that's the third one here. I think if I press 0 and then I click 1, see, now look how they're rotating. They're rotating along the Y axis, okay, which is the green axis here. They're rotating around like that. Now let's say I want to rotate around. You get the point, you know. I don't have to really explain this, but I want to just see what it looks like. See, now it's still rotating around the x-axis. Okay, I don't want that. I want this to be rotating around there. You can adjust the speed down here if you want these. I wish I knew how to animate this so you could increase the speed. I'm actually almost certain there's a way of doing that, but I just haven't put in the effort to do that. But see how they're running slower now? So during a hot day, maybe, you know, you want them running faster like that. Okay, really clearing out the air. So those are shaders that are doing that. So let's go ahead and open up. I'm going to show you another one. Let's go to my map collection here. We're going to go to Sandy Bay. Let that open up. Take some time, take your time, no worries. Is there anything else I can teach you here? What does this have on it? No, it's just a regular. Oh, so this actually has a gloss map on it. So this actually this barn is probably a better example. No, it's not. So this is what it looks like. This is a gloss map called Base S. I use this for a lot of stuff because it kind of makes it look dirtier. This texture is a little bit stretched, but it's not as noticeable in game. But if I remove that gloss map, that's what it looks like. Okay, I want to reapply that, but there are things that you can make it look dirtier by adding that gloss map. Emissive map, that's for lighting. I'm pretty sure this light has. What does this light have? I need to re-click that. There we go. It's spotlight. Let's see. Oh, this has, yeah, there we go. It's got a normal map and a gloss map. This is glass and specular, and then it has a shader source. It has the vehicle shader source. And then I have not played around with these before. So, you know, you might need to play around with these. I don't know if they took this. Okay, it says static light. Okay, so this is vehicle shader static light. Okay, so I have not played around with this enough to play around to know what I'm doing down here. So I'm not going to lead you astray. But if I were you, I'd just play around with this stuff down here. The shaders are located in the base game. If you want to change a shader, you just click here, replace or add a new shader, and go to the base game. And I'm sure you could, well, it's probably in data actually. Data shaders. Okay, so all the shaders are in here. Okay, and then you just saw through that drop down menu with the vehicle shader, all of these different options. I have not played around with them. I should play around with them because I could probably make things look a whole lot better doing it through that way. I'll show you another shader on Sandy Bay real quick. There's one over here. Yeah, this is which shader is this? Nope, I want let me click on the actual, there we go. Custom. Okay, this is the stream shader. Okay, so this isn't rotating necessarily, but it's moving along an axis. Sorry. So you get the point. Different shaders can create animations for you, or the illusion of an animation that's not really there, just by applying it to an object. Okay, and so you can do that with a lot of different things. I know, like flags. Look at this. This definitely has a shader on it. Yep, it has a shader right here. This is flag shader. Okay, and this is not a flag, but it creates that flow, right? So displacement speed, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you could do that for a number of things. Play around with shaders. The ocean has shaders, to make the ripple in the water. I don't know if Oxy did that on his map. It looks like he might have. Looks like there is a ripple. So yeah, we'll get more in depth with shaders in a future episode. But it's helpful to know this stuff right now and playing around with textures. And I think that's pretty much all I have for this lesson. We're gonna get into animated objects. So you're gonna be importing buildings, but like some of these buildings need doors on them, actual physical doors that you don't just want to be able to walk through them willy-nilly. You want some doors that you can add to these barns and whatnot. So we're gonna work on now that we've done a brief overview. Oh, I should say this really quick. I don't want to conclude without saying this. We just did material IDs, and you know how this roof is tied to this wall. Sometimes when you're doing shaders, and this has there are material IDs within this fan, the housing and maybe something else within this. I know these fans in here, this fan that I did, the material IDs were sharing and they had the same material ID. When you apply that shader source to one material ID, like default, and there's another one that's 01-default, the whole thing's going to rotate. Those two objects are going to rotate. It's a pain. So all you need to do is just change the material ID for one of those two, the fan, and even the bearings on this are different. They need to be rotating. See the bearings? Those need to be rotating as well. So, yeah, sometimes you need to change the shader source or the material ID in order to apply the shader source properly. Okay, so that's officially the end of the episode. I wanted to make sure I was clear on that since we did cover the mesh rotate shader. Okay, so let's move on to the next lesson, which is working with animations very basically, and then we'll get into like creating our own animations if you really want, and messing around with those and just taking a look generally in the animated objects XML. Okay, thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I know it was kind of all over the place, but that's the very basics of material editing. Okay, so again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.